Hello there, I'm Georgialee Lang. I've been practicing family law for 28 years. I was into it by about 6 or 7 months, and I was shocked by what I saw. I saw fathers that were lucky if they could see their kids 4 times a month. I saw fathers that had most of their net income going to their wife and their children. And I couldn't believe what was going on. And that was 27 years ago. So I began thinking about this issue, and I realized right from the get-go that no other lawyers that I was practicing with, and that's the city of Vancouver, gave a rat's ass about any of this. I was very surprised. I then, a few years later, ran into Kerry Linda, who's been a close friend of mine for a couple of decades, and he and I felt the same way. And so I began acting for fathers and becoming known as a men's rights lawyer, although unlike Kerry, who styles himself as divorce for dads, I was just doing it, and if you found out who I was and you wanted to hire me, you could. Having said that, I acted for a lot of women too. But when the women came in and they told me that they were convinced that it was only going to be sole custody, I told them I wouldn't be their lawyer then. And gradually, the courts began to change, and as you all know, those of you who have been involved in the court system for the last 15, 20 years, it gradually began to change. And I can tell you right now that I did an interview with the Georgia Straight about 15 years ago, and they asked me what was going on with joint parenting and shared custody, etc. And I told them 15 years ago that it was changing, and it was changing because of Kerry Linda. He was the first guy that walked into a courtroom and challenged a judge that this was bullshit, and nobody else was doing it. So I give a lot of kudos to my friend Kerry. He started it. And he made it his mission to start bringing these arguments to the courts, start introducing the concept of fathers being legitimate caregivers, because the guys were marginalized. They were nothing more than a wallet as far as these judges were concerned. And I was, like I said, I was shocked. So now we fast forward about 10 years ago, I started a blog called Law Diva. And I had more time, I was taking fewer clients, and I was doing more things that I wanted to do and less trial work. And I started writing about what I had seen and what I knew was going on. And I had my blog for about a year, and as you know, it was named one of the best law blog in Canada. But then I got calls from newspapers, National Post, Huffington Post. Would I write for them? You're darn rights I will. And so my stuff started to be publicized all over North America. And I can tell you there's one article that I wrote about 5 years ago called "I'll Just Leave the Country and Pay Nothing." That was the name of my article. And it was about a case out of Ontario where a guy was so beleaguered by what he had to pay for his wife and his kids that he finally decided to leave Ontario, and he went to the Philippines. And the story was in the national press. And I was interested and very, very interested in that story, and wrote another story about it, and actually interviewed his wife, who eventually got no money because he left. So he couldn't see his kids anymore, he wasn't paying any money, and she ended up in British Columbia. She called me. This article on my blog has received, tens of thousands of hits from men all over the world. When I wrote the story, I never realized that there was men all over North America, all over Europe, all over South America, all over the Far East that have the same problem. And if you go to my blog, you'll see the story. Like I said, it's called "I'll Leave the Country and Pay Nothing." And I've got over 3,000 comments from guys, and they're now giving each other advice about how to do, what to do, how they do it. Let me just fast forward to what I've been doing recently, and that is about 5 years ago, I was invited to join a group that is out of the States called Leading Women for Shared Parenting. And this was an organization started by a guy, a very intelligent, articulate businessman who got screwed by the court system in Massachusetts. And he was really smart. He decided that, when men say they're being screwed, who listens to them? But if we can get women who are politicians, lawyers, counselors, psychologists, members of the Senate, members of the House of Commons in Canada and the United States, we've got members all over Europe, and that's what we do now. We promote the fact that men have been marginalized for too long, that men have parenting skills that are equal to women or better, and it's been a real passion of mine and a real joy to see things changing. They're not changing here in Canada. I was very involved in the House of Commons fight to get the law changed. That fell apart. But let me tell you what's going on in the United States right now. There are at least 12 jurisdictions, different states, Arizona, North Carolina, New Jersey, Massachusetts, where shared parenting, Florida, is now in their law. And it's because the guys down there are banding together and they're fighting for it. And that's what we need to do here. Thank you.